Okay. Now I move on to this issue of project stakeholders. So when we take a project, who are all the people who are interested in participating in the project? So let us take a few examples. I have given the example of a small of a single family home there, okay, large bungalow. You have a single person who owns a bungalow, okay. So we know that so it could be one of your future homes, you are the customer. So we know that there is a customer. One of the stakeholders. Who are the others? So let us take single family home as an example. Who are the others who you would bring into this project? Yes, there will be an architect. Okay. Would you bring a project manager? Who would do your project manager? Contractor would do it, or the architect would do your project management in this case. Who else? Vendors, suppliers. Yeah, is there MEP? What is MEP? Plumbing, but it's, I wouldn't put it as MEP. Okay, there is some plumbing involved, but it's not as sophisticated. It's something which your contractor can handle single-handedly. Anyone else? Okay, there are regulatory people like the corporation, this, that, etc. Yeah, there can be finance, bank, there can be regulatory and public agencies like municipal authority, water supply, electricity, sewage. Okay, all of them you will need permissions from all of them. The CMDA, the Metropolitan Development Authority. Okay, so basically what we wanted to say is, so for even a project like this, you have a lot of people who are involved. Okay, now let us take a slightly more complex project. Okay, so this is, let us say, a large IT building. We'll go back to our original list. You certainly have a customer, you will have an architect, you will have a structural engineer, you will have a contractor, you will have suppliers, you will have finance, all of these. Who else will be involved? Okay, there will be a project manager here because it's a large project.
So many contractors.
Yes, yes, so they are called subcontractors. In this case, because it's a single house, the contractor might have the mason, the carpenter, everybody might work with him. You don't need a subcontract, whereas in a large project like this you will go with subcontractors. Okay, so something we missed out here is, in addition to structural engineer, you will need foundation, geotech, all of that will be there, but we will assume that's there. You will really need engineering services here, not just structural. You will need, now you need MEP. Yeah, MEP is part of HVAC. You will need structural, you will need geotech, you will need instrumentation depending on the kind of what are the kind of facilities you will have. You will need instrumentation. I am kind of bringing that here. Yes, all of that you will have. So here you might not need an environmental clearance for the house. Now you will have a public agency which will, you might need environmental clearances. It's something like the pollution control board might come in to say that you have to be cleared. You have more public agencies coming in. What else? Okay.
Suppliers for elevators.
Yeah, all of that will part of MEP. You will have now, for example, a part of MEP, like I said, you have elevators, you have air conditioning systems, you will have fire protection systems. So similar, but the whole thing has got more complex and more people. Okay, so all of these stakeholders are important. Unless as a project manager you manage all of them in some way or the other, you are not going to be able to successfully complete. do all these. So let us take another just let us continue with this thinking. Now here is a public project, something like Delhi Metro. Stakeholders, almost all of the above earlier stakeholders are there, but now you have public at large, and public comes with very different requirements, diverse requirements, okay. And then we are looking for very long term public service. It is not I mean, we are not looking at today's requirements, we are really looking at very much more long term. Here is a project, anyone recognize what this is? No, the one below. What does it look like to you? It is a refinery, okay, it is a refinery. And again, now you have, what is the kind of engineering that goes into refineries? What are the types of engineers? So most of the above earlier ones are the same.
Mechanical.
Yes, you have mechanical for piping, chemical for process, you have instrumentation, you have civil, okay, and you have metallurgy. So now this is the engineering here has become far more complicated. Project management, regulatory, subcontractors, different kinds of subcontractors. When you take the earlier project, this we are primarily in the scope of a civil engineer. Here scope of civil, little bit of MEP and electrical is also certainly there, okay. But yeah, now you go to a project like this, slightly different because it is public, but still more engineering input today. You go to something like refinery, it is a hub of engineering inputs are required in addition to all of the others, okay. Now you go into things like nuclear power plant, so it can get really complex, okay. We can go on discussing this, but the basic issue I want to bring about is there are multiple stakeholders, and unless you understand who the stakeholders are clearly, you will not be able to manage the project. So a lot of project management is understanding your stakeholders and managing them properly on a project, okay. So here is kind of a very a comprehensive look at some of the stakeholders on a project, which is a popular representation, and if you go around you will find it covers many of them on a typical general project, okay, not necessarily a construction project. So stakeholder, again I am just emphasizing stakeholder management is really a key issue. Now coming back to stakeholder management in one more aspect, when you take most of these, all of them, what is the object, why is stakeholder management important? What are the stakeholders trying to do for themselves? What are they? Yes, stakeholders are trying to maximize, they are all in business, they are trying to maximize their objectives, and unless their objectives are aligned with the project management objectives, it is going to be very, very difficult to manage the project, okay. So getting stakeholders on board, getting correct stakeholders on board and managing everyone's objectives and balancing is really the key, is one of the keys, okay. Okay, the next idea we want to discuss is on the phases of a project. This is again very, very important to understand how does a project begin and how does a project end. So if you look at and it also is important to look at it from the who are the players in various phases. So here we have project life cycle or phase, starting from the original idea of a project, okay, going all the way to the decommissioning. So here we have, okay, performing business planning. So we can take any of those, let us say take that IT building as an example. So one of the IT companies want to decide whether they want to set up a building. So yes, so here it is performing business planning, does it make business sense to invest in the building? So you can look at the various subtasks, okay, determine resource requirements, identify corporate objectives, develop project concept. Once a concept is approved, you go to pre-project planning. In most of these it is all business decisions still, okay, it's all from a business point of view they are making, organize pre-project planning, select project alternatives, okay, develop project definition, decide whether to proceed with the project, and most of this is a financial decision, whether is investing in the project brings the returns it should or not if I am a private entity. With a government entity where the investment will bring in social returns or developmental returns, and only then we come to this execute project. So in the execute project phase you have develop detailed design, procure equipment and materials, construct the project, start up the facility. Okay. After that it all goes to operation where you are managing, operating, looking at improvements, improving this thing, and finally decommissioning the project. So this is operation part. Now I just want to put this in the perspective of the engineering curriculum we are learning today. Okay, most of you will be in the civil engineering program 4 or 5 years. What is the focus of the program? Where are we in the program? We are only learning execution, whether it's design, and most of your curriculum is towards detailed design. Okay, it's not even preliminary design, detailed design. So if you look at the curriculum here, I think 80% of your coursework is at least here, and might be okay. Those of you who are taking construction management, you will have more coursework in the construct the project aspect. Okay, so I just wanted to put the perspective of this is what a project goes through as a project manager for the owner. So for someone like we talked about project participants last time, stakeholders, where does the owner interact in this project? Where does the owner come in? Where does the owner go? Or how does the owner's responsibility change? Where is the owner? Obviously the owner is involved here. Okay, how does this responsibility change throughout? Here he has very high responsibility. Okay, responsibility, he is always responsible, it is the owner's responsibility, but day to day here it is probably very high, here it probably is less, and then of course it is very high again. Okay, what about someone like a contractor? Yeah, so there is almost no responsibility in today's contracting model. There is no responsibility in the conventional models, but when you come here you have a lot of responsibility, and then delivery, and then you leave. Okay, someone like so you can have project manager from two sides. You can have the owner's project manager, you can have the contractor's project manager, or the project scope for each is different. The owner's project manager will be looking at at least from here till at least the delivery of the project. The contractor's project manager might be looking only from somewhere in this phase till delivery of the project. Okay, so what I want to emphasize is the different stakeholders play different roles in each of the phases, and finally who is most keen for successful project? Which stakeholder? The owner, because finally he is the one who's going to own it, who's going to operate it, and the owner has to be really involved. Okay, although the involvement decreases a little bit, they have to be fully involved with this throughout the phases, but most of the other actors come in and leave the stage in different parts of it, and how you manage that whole, who comes in when are they brought in, how much information do they have, what are their skills, how do they leave, is also a very, very important part of this whole project management process. Now let us just focus on this phase which comes out here. So if I take execute the project, okay, and I am taken it into what we typically call as engineering, procurement, construction and commissioning. Okay, so you might have heard the word EPC or the acronym EPC, yes or no? Yes. So EPC stands for engineering, procurement and construction, and many of our construction companies today are looking at EPC as a business. So when the owner wants you to build a project, in the older model in one of the models I can get someone to do design, procure the equipment, and a contractor to construct. Okay, but there is a delay in some of that is happening because design has to be fully complete before construction starts. In the EPC model, you try to get the same company. Okay, so if I say EPC, I try to get the same company to do engineering, procurement, and construction. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages?
Lesser number of players you have to.
Lesser number of players, certainly.
Better accountability.
Better accountability because one company is fully responsible.
Work can start early.
Yes, if they manage it properly, work can start early.
Quality.
Might be, yes, if work, given that it's the same accountable company, yes, quality might also be better.
Efficiency of the project.
Yes, efficiency. Okay, so all of these are advantages. What is the disadvantage? If I don't get a company who is really big enough to do EPC properly, they will not be able to deliver on my project. Okay, so EPC is a lot of responsibility. Now, I want to put this a little bit on a timeline. So, if you look at conventional project delivery, it would be E, procurement will start somewhere here, okay, and construction will start somewhere here. That is, or it can even start immediately after engineering. I am just showing an overlap. Basically, there is a lag between engineering and construction. Okay, so this is not acceptable today with the time frame we have. So, if I choose to keep engineering, very engineering same, lot of companies are trying to do this today. Okay. So, I am trying to save my due time, and how am I saving it? By overlapping engineering, procurement, and construction. So, this model is called fast track. Construction. Okay, obviously management of this is far more challenging than management of a conventional method.
So in both the cases, EPC is being done by the same company.
Not so in this case also it can be done, but does not make sense for the same company to do this and this. This is when a single company can do it more efficiently. Typically here engineering is done by someone else and construction is done by someone else. Okay, procurement might be done by the owner themselves or some kind of consultant. But obviously when I can do this fast tracking, it makes sense to give it to a single company, because then my communication between engineering and construction, I assume, is very good, is much better because it is a single. Okay, so and in like we discussed, which case is management challenge more? Fast track, yes, because you have to constantly manage drawings coming from engineering to construction. The owner then changes his mindset, not exactly like this, I will have to go back to engineering. So that interface has to be very, very well managed. And today you will find a lot of projects are in the fast track mode, but engineering is where there is the engineering construction interface is the challenge, and the weak link is there, because traditionally we were doing this and the organization was set up for doing construction after engineering was complete, but just the schedules do not permit that today. Okay. Another point I want to discuss is this graph here, okay, which goes back to our earlier phases, okay, performing business planning, okay, to operation and maintenance, and you have two curves. The yellow curve is showing how cost accrues as the project progresses. So you will find in the initial phase the cost, there is not much money spent, okay, but when you come into the design and construction phase, that is when most of the money gets spent, and then operation and maintenance there is again some amount of it. Now the purple curve on that is the influence. What it says is how much can I influence the outcome of the project. Obviously in the early stages of my construction I have a lot of influence on the project, or with little influence I can, or with my influence I can easily make a change. So let us say I take a building, I can say, oh, I am going to go with steel or with concrete. Where can I make the decision? In the early phases. After I do my design I can't make that decision, so my influence actually decreases, okay, and any change I make here, what does it do? It has a much bigger impact on cost of the project. So early in the phase I have a high influence with a low cost implication, later in the phase I have low influence with high cost implication, okay. So this is the way, this is something which is to be kept in mind, because it is really important to understand that you need to make your decisions, you want to make critical decisions early in the project so that changes are minimized later. Okay, now we come to how is actually a construction project organized. Okay, so there are many variations here. So I am not saying this is just a typical structure, and I would say that there can be as many variations as there are companies and projects. So this is just to give you an idea as to where the scheduling function comes in. So if you take from the construction side, I am looking from the contractor side, okay, you might have a regional manager. For a large contractor you will have a project manager function, might be for a specific project. Under the project manager you will have a variety of groups. You have the scheduling and planning, okay, which is the function of this course, and we will come back to what this person does. You will have the quality control, you will have occupational health, safety, environment, you will have the execution team who is actually doing the work, okay. You can have others, okay, who will report to the project manager. You have subcontractors who will be doing work, you know, for the project. So this is kind of all the people on the project. You certainly then have the client, the architect, the design engineers, the project management consultants, and I have not put them into a particular organization or shown relationships, because depending on the contractual conditions they can all vary, but these are finally the players who come in. There are different organizational responsibilities, but our focus is on the scheduling person, and he typically reports to the project manager, and he is really a critical person in the construction projects.